I found a doll in a trash pile behind my apartment building. I found the doll in a trash pile behind my apartment building. It was small, maybe a foot tall, caked in grime and missing one of its tiny plastic sheets. Its yarn hair was a tangled mess, and its dress, once probably a cheerful yellow, was faded and torn. But the thing that really caught my eye, the detail that made me stop and stare, was its mouth. Someone had stitched it completely shut with thick black thread. The stitches were crude, angry-looking, pulling the painted lips into a permanent, silent grimace. I don't know why I picked it up. I'm not a sentimental person, and I've never liked dolls. They always felt like little spies, with their glassy, unblinking eyes. But something about this one. It felt less like a toy, and more like a secret. I tucked it under my arm and took it upstairs. That night, after a half-hearted attempt to clean it, I placed it on the old wooden chair in the corner of my bedroom. It looked out of place there, a dark little effigy in the moonlit room. I went to sleep, and for a while, everything was normal. Then, I woke up. It wasn't a noise that woke me, but a feeling. The kind of prickling sensation you get on the back of your neck when you know you're being watched. I opened my eyes, my heart's already starting to pound. My room was dark, but my eyes slowly adjusted. And then I saw it. The doll was no longer on the chair across the room. It was standing on the floor, right beside my bed. Its head was tilted, its one shoe planted firmly on my rug, its button eyes seeming to stare right into mine. A wave of cold dread washed over me, but I immediately tried to rationalize it. I must have been sleepwalking. Yeah, that was it. I get up in my sleep sometimes. I must have moved it without realizing. It was a flimsy excuse, and I knew it, but it was better than the alternative. I snatched the doll up. It felt strangely heavy in my hand and practically threw it back onto the chair. I pulled the covers up to my chin and forced my eyes shut, repeating to myself that it was just a doll, just my imagination running wild in the middle of the night. My digital clock glowed on the nightstand. 3:11 a.m. I eventually fell back into a restless sleep. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a sliver of sunlight hitting my face, far later than I should have been up. My phone alarm never went off. I sat up, groggy and annoyed, reaching for my phone on the desk. And that's when I froze. The doll was sitting on my desk, right in front of my phone, its back to me. It was positioned as if it had been looking at the screen. My blood ran cold. There was no way I had put it there in my sleep. No way. As I stared, my eyes fixed on the back of its head, I noticed something new. The black thread sealing its mouth. It looked different. The stitches weren't as tight as they were before. One of the threads was frayed, almost loose. It was as if something had been straining against them from the inside. I spent the rest of the day on edge, unable to shake the feeling of unease. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to the doll sitting on my desk. Later that afternoon, the wail of sirens filled the street outside my building. I peered out the window to see police cars and an ambulance parked haphazardly by the entrance. A small crowd of tenants had gathered in the hallway. My neighbor from 3B, a grumpy old man named Mr. Harrison, who always complained about noise, had been found dead. The police were calling it a freak accident. A fall. But I heard whispers from the people who saw him. His neck, they said. It was twisted at an impossible angle, like a snapped twig. An image of the doll, its head tilted, flashed in my mind. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the insane thought. It was a coincidence. A horrible, terrifying coincidence. That night, I wasn't taking any chances. I took the doll and locked it inside my bedroom closet. It wasn't enough. I found an old rope in my utility drawer and tied the doorknobs together, pulling the knot as tight as my shaking hands would allow. I triple-checked it. The door was sealed shut. I crawled into bed, leaving a lamp on, convinced that this would be the end of it. I laid there for hours, listening to every creak and groan of the old building, my ears straining for any sound from the closet. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted off. And then, the clock on my nightstand changed to 3:11 a.m. I was pulled from sleep by a sound. It was faint, but unmistakable. A soft, scraping sound. The sound of something small being dragged across the wooden floor. It was coming from the direction of the closet. I didn't open my eyes. I couldn't. I was paralyzed with a fear so absolute, so primal, that I could barely breathe. The sound got closer. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Pause. It was methodical. It was getting closer to my bed. My heart was a drum against my ribs, so loud I was sure it could be heard. Then, the scraping stopped. The silence that followed was even worse. I felt a slight dip in the mattress, right beside my head. A cold spot formed on my pillow. And then, a voice whispered right next to my ear. It was a dry, raspy sound, like a child trying to speak for the very first time, their vocal cords stiff from disuse. It said 2 words. "Don't hide me." Must have passed out from sheer terror, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. Sunlight was streaming through the window again. I sat bolt upright, my body drenched in a cold sweat. My eyes darted around the room. The closet door was wide open. The rope lay in a useless coil on the floor. And sitting on the pillow right next to where my head had been, was the doll. It was looking right at me. And its mouth was completely open. The black threads were gone, ripped away, leaving only tiny holes in the fabric around its lips, which were now parted in a small, dark O. A silent scream. Was it? Oh. Grabbed the doll, ran out of my apartment, and threw it into the nearest public garbage can, burying it under bags of trash. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. But later that night, when I came home from work, it was sitting on my doormat, waiting for me. The next day, I drove 20 miles out of the city and threw it into a river. The day after, it was back, sitting on my kitchen counter, dripping water onto the floor. I tried burning it, but the flames wouldn't catch. I tried burying it, but it would just reappear. Always closer. Always waiting. And then, the people around me started dying. It wasn't random, like Mr. Harrison. It was specific. My boss, who had passed me over for a promotion, had a fatal heart attack. A so-called friend who had spread a nasty rumor about me was in a horrific car accident. A woman who cut me off in traffic and flipped me off was found dead in her home from an apparent gas leak. Each time I felt a surge of anger or resentment towards someone, they would suffer a terrible fate within days. That's when I finally, truly understood. The doll wasn't killing randomly. It wasn't even acting on its own. It was a conduit. It was listening to the dark, fleeting thoughts in my head, the flashes of rage I never would have acted. And then, it was making them real. It was my own personal, twisted genie. Tonight, the doll is sitting across from me again, on the same chair where this all began. Its mouth is still open. Its head is tilted, as if it's listening. Waiting. I'm trying so hard not to think. Trying to keep my mind a complete blank. But it's so difficult. The city is loud, people are frustrating, and anger is such an easy, tempting emotion. I'm just trying not to think about my landlord who is threatening to evict me. I'm trying not to think about anyone. Most of all, I'm trying my hardest not to think about myself and what might happen if my darkest thoughts finally turn inward. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror stories every week. Thanks for watching.